everybody, Jeff Evely here out in Nova Scotia. This is the DNR office on Mountain Road in Coxheath, Nova Scotia, and this is not the woods. But back here, this is the woods. So I have a couple of conservation officers with me right now who are not on camera but have advised me that if I go into the woods, if I defy their orders to go into the woods, then I will be fined. So I'm going to walk down here and go into these woods. I'm just going to make this as painless as I can for those guys and go in here. And they have me on camera as well, walking in the woods. Okay, and I didn't ask, but did you write the ticket already, or?
No, we'll meet you back out front.
Back out front at the reception desk there? Okay, if I bring my camera, keep you guys off it?
Yep. Fine is $28,872.50.
Okay, I thought it was $25,000. It's $28,870.
With court costs, victim fees.
Taxes.
Oh, victim fees.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. All right, thanks very much, gentlemen.
Yeah.
I appreciate your courteous approach. Nice chatting with you. All right, take care. So here we go. Oh, I have a ticket here for, let me see if we can see that, $28,870.50 for victimizing somebody. Okay, so more to follow.
This is Dan Dicks here reporting for Press for Truth. We've got a great show lined up for you today, my friends, so let's just jump right into it. Joining me on the line right now is Jeff Evely, the first man to be fined over $28,000 for daring to walk into the woods after the province of Nova Scotia decided to do the very draconian thing and ban doing such a thing. This includes hiking, riding a bike, fishing, you name it. It's absolutely insane. So Jeff, thank you so much for first of all taking some time to speak with me here today at Press for Truth, and also for engaging in that act of civil disobedience that you decided to engage in. So I want to talk about the kind of things that you expect to see come of this. But before we get into that, maybe you could start us off by telling us, what was your initial reaction when you heard on, I think it was August 5th, that they were going to be enacting these orders effective immediately, that you wouldn't be able to walk into what is essentially amounts to your own backyard there in Nova Scotia?
Yeah, my immediate reaction, I mean, I guess I knew right away that I was going to defy the ban and I was going to take the fine. So that was my immediate response. And I delayed it by a couple of days because my immediate reaction was that I was furious. And this is the second time that they did this. They did it also back in 2023. And at that time, I submitted an application for judicial review on charter grounds, just self-representing. And ultimately, the court declined to award me standing because apparently my rights don't really mean anything in a Canadian court. There has to be money involved. So they said because I did not get fined, I didn't have standing, and declined to hear my case on the merits. So when they did it again, I said, well, I know what I need to do now. I need to go out and get fined and make sure this thing gets heard on the merits so we can nip it in the bud once and for all.
Well, taking it to the courts, I think, is a good call. This is probably the space where we need to fight these battles. But I mean, could it potentially come down to which judge you might get? And what do you think? I know you can't predict the future, but what do you think might come of that?
I have very low expectations of the first judge that you hit. It seems to be the case that we need to take these things to the higher courts. That seems to be a pretty consistent trend that we've observed over the last several years. We can't rely on the lower court judges to, have any spine. So I'm not abundantly hopeful that we'll get a favorable decision on the first try. But I think we have some really good prospects. I mean, I would probably put it at about 70. Well, Grok put it at like 70%, that we would win in a case like this on charter grounds. And but stranger things have happened, and I agree with you that this is where the key battle space is right now. It is in the courtroom. There need to be legal consequences for this stuff. Like Michel Juno Katsoya once said that we should have politicians in jail. I think that is the case. The expectations are higher in positions of power, and there need to be real consequences for people who engage in these kinds of abuses.
Well, you mentioned the charter, and I think that is going to be key to the case because, as I understand it, under Section 6 of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, this is where you have the freedom of mobility, the freedom to roam as you like to. And this order even applies to private property in the sense that you can't walk around on your own private property if you invite a friend over. So, I
Correct.
mean, what are your thoughts on the fact that, like, especially as a retired Canadian veteran, a man who's been to places like Iraq and Afghanistan, the fact that here in your own home now, after coming back from those things, you can't even walk around in your own private property unless you're alone.
Yeah, it's a profound betrayal, is what's gone on in the last several years, and we're a people who say lest we forget, as in not just lest we forget to have a funeral for our fallen like once a year, but lest we forget what they stood for, and lest we forget that we all have a sacred civic duty to safeguard our inheritance for future generations. That's why we sing, "We stand on guard for thee." So I'm engaged in that civic duty right now. I'm trying to satisfy my civic duty to safeguard that inheritance, and also, I was a member of the Canadian Armed Forces, so I swore an oath to defend Canadians from all threats, foreign and domestic. And our governments are a threat to our people, as we've seen in the last several years. And rights need to be asserted. I think it is the case that once in a human lifetime, the specter of global tyranny looms large. And as we can see, we're not out of the woods here in Canada. Just because we declared ourselves to be a free country, it doesn't mean we're not subject to all the same human impulses as everybody else. And I think that's what we have right now is some very impulsive, undisciplined, dumb leadership in charge. So it's up to us really to bring them to heel.
Well, the leadership at the time during COVID 1984, as I like to call it, Justin Trudeau even flat out said that COVID lockdowns and what we've learned from them will eventually in the future be applied to climate change. So, do you see a correlation there? Do you see a progression from the COVID era of where, the draconian measures were enacted, like the Emergencies Act, for instance? And a parallel to what we're seeing today with what's happening in Nova Scotia?
Could be. I don't, well, because I think you asked two questions there. One, is it a progression? And two, is it a parallel? So I would say it's more likely a parallel than a progression. I don't believe for 1 second that these people are sufficiently competent to pull off conspiracies. So I think that overwhelmingly, and this is very much congruent with my 20 years of experience inside the machine, serving in the military. What most people are calling conspiracies are generally ineptitude and covered up. So it's really a cover up more so than it is a conspiracy. And the purpose of the cover up is to cover the ineptitude. And right now we have a situation in Nova Scotia where we had the wildfires of 2023, the arson attacks, of course. And the guy who set the main fire there in Barrington, he was charged with, lighting a fire on private property without permission, failing to prevent that fire from spreading, and leaving the fire unattended. That's arson. So some very suspicious things going on here. They could just impose really stiff penalties for eco-terrorists, but they're not going to do that because they're on the left. And we live in a communist country now, so it's not rule of law. It's liberating tolerance, as per Herbert Marcuse, which is, it's just the jackboot for the right and carte blanche for the left. So all things leftists get a pass, and they won't prosecute these eco-terrorists. The other thing is that the province itself, the government, is totally dysfunctional and inept, and they haven't been managing our forests We had that hurricane a few years ago, and there's still dead wood down all over the place that they haven't cleared. It's a tinderbox out there, and it's their fault because they didn't do their jobs. And also, they prohibit Nova Scotians from entering the woods to collect firewood. Like if you want to go in there, if you just want to let people go in and pick up a bunch of dead wood that they can use to heat their homes, that's not allowed. So it's astonishing, I think, that we're coming up against these things. It's really sort of testing our system, and we're getting to see where a lot of the weak points are. And with respect to the order and its overreach, because that's what it is. I think one of the outcomes here that we could hope for is perhaps having the Forest Act of Nova Scotia declared ultra vires, because what they're standing on for the proclamation that bans everybody from the woods is Section 25(1). And I challenged this the last time I came around. The Crown was actually trying to argue that Section 25(1) says the minister can do whatever the hell he wants. And in another paragraph, it says he can extend the fire season if he wants. So he could keep this going indefinitely in theory. And there need to be some safeguards around that. I argued in court, I was like, well, the Forest Act was written in like 1986 and the Constitution came into effect in 1982. So I'm pretty sure they meant he can do whatever he wants within the confines of the charter. But that was not the tact that the Crown was taking at the time. So it seems that this is a theme, an attitudinal theme, within our government, in our public service, the civil service in Nova Scotia here, there's probably some. I would say cultural issues that need to be addressed within the professional public servant class.
Well, you remind me of the fact that just a couple of years ago, when this happened in 2023 in Nova Scotia, there was a group of retired firefighters who attempted to put together, teams that are, not necessarily frontline, but certainly, behind the lines, able to help out in a major, major way.
Yeah.
And the premier essentially said, thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah.
Were you aware of that at the time, or
Yes.
and what are your thoughts on that? I mean, that seems like absolutely insane to me.
Yeah, it's so insane, in fact, that there was a viral video about it put out by Peter McIsaac, who's a friend of mine down around the Halifax area there. And Peter was a firefighter in the province for decades, and he's a woodsman, so he knows his way around the woods quite well. And he had reached out to the province during the wildfires to let them know that he had assembled a crack team of retired guys who would come in to augment the effort to quell those Nova Scotia wildfires. And being a firefighter, I've never been a firefighter myself, but the way Peter explained it to me, it sounds like it's a lot like it is in the military. Like for every guy you have on the hose, there's probably 8 guys behind him somewhere supporting him in some capacity. So it would have been a great idea to bring a lot of those guys, the managerial types, back because clearly everything's being mismanaged. So they need as much help as they can get, but they're too prideful to accept that. They're more worried about the public facing optics of them being our saviors all the time than they are about actually being our saviors.
Well, clearly this is a major overreach what they're doing here, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who are concerned about potential fires. So a lot of people might be wondering what is something more reasonable than this flat out ban on fishing and biking and hiking and people who don't even necessarily have something to ignite a fire with in their own pockets. Is there something more reasonable that would kind of please everybody that could have been done here?
Well, you're never going to please everybody all the time. I understand that. But yeah, I mean, the reasonableness, the unreasonableness of this proclamation is really what's at issue here because they have to be reasonable under the charter. It's got to be logically connected to the goal of preventing fires. Walking in the woods is not a fire hazard, so there's no logical connection. And the other one is that in whatever measures they put in place, they need to be minimally interfering with my charter rights. This is not minimally interfering because it's literally an overreach. It's overkill going all the way to banning walking when really like you could just ban sources of ignition, for example. And maybe there's a debate that we could have around vehicles in the woods. Maybe I don't know if I want to take that on today, but how often does an exhaust from an ATV actually start a grass fire? I don't really know of any. So, I have some questions around that. Even this assertion that ATVs are somehow a fire hazard. I would say they are more than walking, but is it sufficiently hazardous to warrant interference with my freedom of movement? Well, that's the debate that would have to be had. And of course, none of these governments have had that debate. They won't even allow these orders and proclamations and the like to be subjected to the Oaks test in court. They're doing everything they can to keep it out. And I think that just goes to show you how secure they are in their decision making.
Well, I guess that's why you decided to ignite this debate, so to speak, by doing what you did, by engaging in that act of civil disobedience, by kind of bringing it on yourself and going down there and saying, look, guys, essentially, this is unconstitutional. This is a violation of my rights. I'm going to go ahead and do this now, and
Mhm.
you're going to have to find me or do whatever it is you're going to do. So tell us about what that experience was like, because you recorded the whole thing, which, first of all, excellent move. I would strongly advise anybody who wants to engage in this type of civil disobedience should have the cameras rolling at all times. So what was that whole experience like for you when you decided to just go for it?
It was pretty good, and like I said, initially I was pretty aggravated, and I've been taking on a lot in the last several years. So this isn't even the only case I have in the courts right now. So, and I ran in a federal election and all kinds of stuff, and so I was pretty annoyed that I have to take on this new case now. And but I waited. I waited a couple of days because I never want to act when I'm angry. If you act out of anger or you act out of fear, then you will live to regret it. So. I just kind of made sure that I was able to get myself in a reasonably good mindset before I went down there. I reached out to ahead of time to let them know that I was coming. I went to the office, as you can see, so they didn't have to come find me. I made everything. I went over the top. I'm doing everything I can to make this as easy as possible for you guys. Don't take it personally. It's a matter of principle that I'm trying to stand on here. But Tim Houston is the target. It's not you. And a little bit of that professional courtesy, I think, went a long way. And the guys were really good, quite professional. We all shook hands at the end of it. And there's a lot of stuff that's not on the recording that I cut out there. Like I had a really nice chat with one of them where we were just kind of talking about guys from around the neighborhood. And he knows a guy in the military, so I must know him too, and that kind of stuff. We did the typical Cape Breton thing, who's your father, who's your cousin, where'd you grow up, and all this stuff. And then we just sort of draw those connections. It's a pretty small wood pile around here. So we tend to have a lot of connections like that, and we just had some really friendly chit chat, small town chit chat that is a lot of what I moved back here for. So yeah, on the whole, tip of the hat to the forestry guys there. They handled it professionally. There might have been one or two tense moments there, but I understand that that's their job too. Like and there's a need to demonstrate that for later when people are really scrutinizing this, there's the need to demonstrate that they strongly advised me not to go into the woods. So I kind of had to play along with that, and I think. Just that kind of mutual respect is what resulted in such a successful act of civil disobedience. And that was, I think, what I really hoped to provide with a lot of the recording. Obviously, it has to do with the court case as well. But in putting it on social media, I was hoping that perhaps I might be able to provide an example that others can use to bring the civility back to the disobedience, to put the civil back in the civil disobedience, because we've really lost our civility in the last several years. And I think we need to bring it back before we lose ourselves.
Well, I hope that those guys are going to set an example as well, because they knew you were acting on principle, but other officers out there who may be enforcing these rules, I mean, how do you think that might potentially go? With your regular Joe Schmo cop who's going to be out there potentially having to enforce these draconian measures that I'm sure when they signed up to the force, they never imagined they'd have to do to their fellow Canadians, but here we are. How do you think some of the officers who are going to have to enforce this stuff are going to deal with, regular people in the woods?
Well, the officers are just regular people too, and I think that the respect is really the important component there, because they're going to get defensive and they're going to get combative. They're prone to these types of behaviors like the rest of us are. So there's no need to peak such instincts in them and try to keep everything as cerebral as you can be, strip all the emotion out of it, and just handle it like a pro. And I think we'll get a lot further with that approach. Now, that's not to say that I haven't engaged in some more aggressive approaches in the past. I just don't think that that's appropriate here. It's a question of adopting the appropriate leadership style for the task and purpose. And here, I think that like I said, taking a very civil approach. I. I think that I was in a better position to do that by going to the office where they were instead of being caught in the act, and then that leads to just a completely different chemistry within the moment. But here I'm being upfront with them. I can come out and I can look at them in the eye and say, look, I'm a straight shooter and I'm not trying to mess you guys around. So I'm not playing games. I'm a serious person and I have a serious concern, and this is the only way that I can address it. So, hopefully you don't take it personally. And they didn't. They were good. They were very professional.
Yeah, that was clear in the footage. One thing though that really had me questioning things is when you pointed out that, look, the fine I thought was going to be $25,000. Why is this like 28 and change? What are we talking about here? And they mentioned taxes, but they also mentioned something about a victim. That's
Yeah.
where I'm a little bit confused here. Who exactly is the victim when it comes to what you did?
I am. So I apparently have to pay the province so they can write me a check for my pain and compensation. I don't know. I think it just really demonstrates, it's just another layer of absurdity on this whole thing. And apparently, like I saw somebody sharing it online there before, where it is Nova Scotia law that they just tack on this victim surcharge to any offense. And I'm like, there's no victim. And a victimless crime, I mean, is that even supposed to exist? Really? So I think that the state, in its primary function, is to prevent us from coercing one another. It's to prevent us from harming one another. But in this case, like there was no coercion and there was no harm. So what is the enforcement action for?
Yeah, exactly. There clearly was no infringement upon anybody's personal freedoms except for your own, which is what
Yeah.
you were trying to expose there. So, when is the court date? And I know you can't predict the future, but I mean, what sort of things do you expect to come out of this? Because I don't know if you know, maybe you saw in my message, I had a similar thing happen during COVID where I breached a quarantine facility and was
Yeah.
arrested, and me and my wife were fined $1,000 tickets each for doing so. We went to court, we fought it, we won. The judge ended up saying, "What does breaching a quarantine facility even mean?" And I just
Yeah.
shrugged my hands up like this, and he threw the whole thing out. And in fact, we went ahead and decided to frame our our tickets, and we have that whole thing hanging up on in our kitchen right now because we're quite pleased with how the whole thing turned out.
It's a
So,
great idea.
what do you expect to see come of this, and what would you like to see come of this, after this is all said and done?
Well, I think in the immediate term, like I said, like it could be a longer battle in the courts. I'm not sure yet. It's just that I'm a healthy cynic, and but legally, I would say the Forests Act could be declared ultra vires because they're standing on Section 25(1), which says that the minister can do whatever the hell he wants. And in another section, it even says he can extend the fire season if he deems it necessary. So he has this kind of unlimited power under the Forests Act. And that was pointed out when I went to court the first time over this. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Like this act was written in 1986. So the charter was there in 1982. I'm pretty sure they meant that he can do whatever he wants within the confines of the charter. But that wasn't the argument that the government lawyers were making. But the case, again, it never got heard on the merits. It was dismissed because I didn't have standing. But I should have standing now. I'm going to have to defend myself against this fine, and I can stand on my rights now. Get it into court, and we'll get them to rule on the merits of this thing. And I think if I had to guess, I would say that we're going to see something like a declaration of ultra vires with respect to the Forests Act. And what I personally would like to see is some accountability, not just for this, but Tim Houston got elected on a promise not to impose vaccine passports or mandates. And then that was the first damn thing that he did. And we saw a spike in so-called COVID deaths in January of 2022 when the mandate came into full effect, where we had 10 times the number of so-called COVID deaths in January that we had the previous November. So that's mass murder, and the precedent for that is to be tried and hanged at The Hague. That's the kind of thing that Western veterans really pride themselves in doing, is bringing such abusers to justice. Now, I don't personally believe in the death penalty. I don't think that human beings are sufficiently moral or competent to decide life or death for another. But I do think that Michel Juno Katsoya was right when he said, like, there needs to be prison time. Like, there needs to be some real accountability for these human rights abusing leaders. The standards is higher for them when you're in a higher position of power. The standards higher for you. So jail time. Yeah, 1,000%.
Yeah, well said. I mean, I remember when they enacted the Emergencies Act and then, to clamp down on that legitimate protest. And
Yep.
then a few years later, essentially, it was ruled that that was unconstitutional, that was carried out illegally. It was something they should not have done. So hopefully that's going to be the case here coming up at your court case. But let's hypothetically imagine for a second that you get one of those bad judges and he decides to lay the hammer down, and go ahead and fine you. I don't know if you're a super wealthy man, but $28,000 is a lot of money. What do you think you're going to do in that situation? Would you be launching a Give, Send, Go campaign or a Go Get Funding campaign? I would advise against GoFundMe because they
Yeah. Yeah, I
tend
know.
to shut down these types of conversations. But what sort of plans might you have moving forward should this go in that particular direction?
Yeah, I think we could probably fundraise for it. But I'm not even going there yet. Like, let's just see how it plays out in the courts and whether or not it actually sticks. And I have seen, a lot of people who tend to get momentum when it comes to the freedom fighting space. They get accused of all this grifting and stuff like that. So I'm just a little bit mindful about asking for money. And if people ask, then I will tell them to donate to the JCCF because they're wonderful. But even when I'm posting my stories, I'm not really saying go and donate to the JCCF or anything like that. And they did, like, I do think that they're wonderful, and they did reach out to me and say, okay, let's give you some help. I think that we need an organization like that. It's essential in Canada, clearly. If you're able, then go ahead and donate to them. But I'm not really terribly concerned right now with the next stage of what if. I think it's probably better to cross that bridge when we come to it.
Yeah, that's true. And I suppose right now one of the better outcomes also would be that this creates somewhat of a ripple effect, and Canadians first of all understand why this is a problem in the first place, but secondly, how they can properly engage in civil disobedience when more of these things inevitably pop up in the future, right? I mean, do you think
Yeah.
what you have done could potentially catch, like, send out a virus of freedom, so to speak, across Canada? Because that seems to be what we need right now.
Well, it takes one spark to start a wildfire. So, like I said, I hoped with posting the video to social media that I could perhaps serve as an example to others in how to bring that civil back into civil disobedience. And I think we'll be a more effective if we do that. And it's at that stage. Okay, like I'm just so tired of the kind of petty infighting and stuff like that. Like, generations of unborn Canadians are counting on us to be big people about this. So let's all be grown-ups, okay? Figure out how you can work together with one another, and where you can't work together, you can part ways amicably, and where you find common ground, then work on that common ground. And the more you work on it, the more you'll find that common ground tends to grow. And this is kind of how we do things, especially on the right side of the political spectrum, whereas there's a lot more kind of groupthink and cancel culture and mob mentality over there on the left. But on the right, we're against all these coercive measures. Okay, it's about building consensus, appealing to people's intellect, and that's really, I think, the denigration of human dignity that we've seen over the course of the last several years is that our leaders don't view us as equal agents with whom to be reasoned. They seem to view us as livestock to be coerced. So yeah, I think we've really kind of crossed the Rubicon here into authoritarian territory, and rights need to be asserted. It's just, I think, a simple fact of history that every human lifetime we need to stand one more time. The tree of liberty grows thirsty, right?
Absolutely. Well said. I often say we're beyond crunch time. I mean, the time to act was yesterday, but that doesn't mean, we can't engage in this more so now. So, any final thoughts just to wrap this up on this whole
Sure.
situation? I'm sure it's been a whirlwind for you. It's probably been pretty crazy, and it's going to be for the next couple of weeks at least. So, any final thoughts from you on this whole situation you're been dealing with?
Yeah, I mean, just if I can offer kind of some of the lessons that I've taken over the course of, my lifetime of service to this country, I would say, like, it's a war, okay? We're not going to win it in a single battle. It's a matter of, wins and losses in the aggregate going in the right direction over time. We need to think strategically about it. And there's really two things that you have to remember, no matter what your role is when you're going to war. And number one is that you can't take it personally. If you take it personally, then you're not going to last. Okay, you're going to thunder in, you're going to burn out. And number two is we're not going to save all the children. So it is going to continue to be awful. I think that it's going to be a few more years, probably like 2030-ish, early 2030s, before we really start to see things come on a serious upswing again, with the momentum overwhelmingly shifting back in the right direction, the pendulum swinging back, I'll say. But it's a matter of outlasting them and mitigating the damage as much as we can between now and then. And if we're able to do that, to show enough resiliency, then I think this agenda will fall apart on its own.
Very well said. I've always looked at this very much so as well as like an information war. And
Yeah, it
as a
is.
retired veteran, I'm sure you'll understand the analogy that sometimes you come across wounded soldiers in the info war who sometimes are just too far gone to be able to help. And you really need to move on and help the next guy. And, that's what we got to continue to do in this information war moving forward. And that's what you've been doing. And I think you've set an excellent example with your active civil disobedience. So I want to strongly encourage everybody to show you their support, especially if this goes in a negative way, depending on what judge you get. And people can do that by following your Twitter. I will put a link to your X account in the description below, so people can
Thank you.
keep up to date with you and everything you've caused here. And hopefully, as we said, this is going to be a ripple effect that's going to go out across Canada and just do nothing but make us freer here in this
Yeah,
country. So thank
that's
you
right.
so much once again for what you've done and for taking the time to speak with us here today at Press for Truth.
My pleasure, Dan. Thank you.
All right, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. What a fantastic interview, and what a fantastic guy. I really do hope you're going to show your support for Jeff moving forward on this one. And if you do appreciate this type of journalism, please consider making a contribution to help me here at Press for Truth as well. You can check out my Give, Send, Go campaign, or you can visit pressfortruth.ca/donate. Once again, thank you so much to anybody who does contribute. I can't do this work without you. So that's all for today, guys. I'm happy to have brought that one to you. Please click the thumbs up button, share this video, and stay tuned, guys. I'm going to have more video reports coming soon. This is Dan Dicks reporting for Press for Truth. We all want truth. The truth will set you free.